And here is a new instructional game. And I'm going to start with the pawn e4. Which defense is he going to play against us? That's what we're going to find out. He plays c5, the Sicilian defense. So against the Sicilian defense, I play knight f3. It's the main move, of course, to support the d4 push. And now he plays knight c6. So I'm going to bring out my bishop to b5. That allows me to prepare for kingside castling. And this tension between the bishop and the knight can lead to an exchange, which can be interesting because it will unbalance the pawn structure. And at the same time, it will unbalance the position material as well. By the way, I'm going to initiate this exchange. Look, I take the knight. He recaptures with the pawn from d7 to c6 to free his bishop on c8. So now, in this position, it's true that he has the pair of bishops. It's true that he has the only light squared bishop, but I have one more piece to play on the dark squares. So my goal is to fight for control of the dark squares. So for now, I'll just do kingside castling. I'll finish my development. If he tries to pin me, I play h3 and he can't maintain the pin. If he goes to h5, I play g4 and I crush his bishop. And if he takes, I recapture and he won't have the pair of bishops anymore. So I play h3. He takes, I take back. Now there's no longer that color imbalance. I don't have an extra piece to play against black. And he no longer has the pair of bishops with the light squared bishop. The only imbalance we can notice, a lasting imbalance, is the pawn structure. There's another imbalance that's temporary for now, which is my development advantage. He plays queen to d7 and prepares queenside castling, so there will be another imbalance. It's the opposite side castling that leads to attacking games, since each player will attack on their own side. But notice that he can't do queenside castling right away, because he would lose the pawn on f7. So I'm going to play pawn to d3, freeing my bishop, and see if he'll do queenside castling right away. Maybe he can play e6, so that the queen defends f7 laterally before queenside castling. Actually, he plays e5, with the same idea of defending f7. But I thought he wanted to play e6 to keep the bishop, g7, the big open dark squared diagonal. So for me, what could be interesting is not to play k to c3, but to play k to d3 or d2 to get to the c4 square. That's a square that interests me, because if I play b5, it will weaken the defense of the c5 pawn, which is a double pawn, which can no longer be protected by another pawn. But I'll start with pawn b3. That also gives the b2 square to my bishop and the diagonal and the pressure on e5. Then maybe knight d2, knight c4 to increase that pressure. Ah, there it is. He does queenside castling. There's another idea I'm thinking about, which is to go after the pawn c5 with moves like knight c3, knight a4 times 3. The problem is there will be the move b6. So I'm going to play a4 to prepare a5 and prevent him from consolidating with b6. Because there would be captures and the opening of the file for my rook. And you see this c5 pawn times 3. Queen e3, that can already target it twice. I was talking about placing c3, knight f4, but for now, the pawn is in the way. But if I play a5, it will not be in the way anymore. And the f5 pawn will prevent the b6 push, or in any case, discourage it. It's a bit slow, but after all, he also has to develop his pieces. He plays a5. You see, he will want to play b6 without me being able to play a5 myself. That's interesting. But in that case, I'll go back to my variation with knight a3, klc4, or else knight d2, knight c4 to attack a5 without him being able to play b6. And on top of that, it will attack e5. If I go to a 3, he'll easily figure out that I'm going to c4. So I'll go to d2 first. He plays h5, and now k4 is coming. See, and look at how I'm attacking. The pawn of e5, the pawn of a5, while controlling the b6 square. And at the same time, of course, I'm threatening k and b6 with the royal fork. He doesn't see it. He plays bishop d6 to defend e5, but he didn't see the main threat, the hole on b6. and with his fork he resigns immediately. The computer gives me a good accuracy score with 97% against 79% for my opponent. All right, now a game where I have black and I'm playing against an opponent rated 1320. He starts with knight f3. I'm going to play the pawn d5. I put my pawn in the center and he plays c4. He's playing in a hypermodern style. That was the school of thought at the beginning of the 20th century. It's not considered modern anymore, but at the time it was called the modern or hypermodern school, which consists of fighting for the center with flank moves. That is to say, he's going to fight against my pawn center since I've already placed a central pawn using flank moves. You see, moves from the wing. The knight on f3 comes to control the e5 and e4 squares, which are central squares. But it's a knight that comes in from the side. And the pawn on c4, which is also a wing pawn, comes to attack my central pawn on d5. So in this position, we play d4. That's the main move. Mm-hmm. And normally white will play b4 afterwards. Why do they play that? b4 is to give the b2 square for an attack. And in case of knight c6, to have the possibility to play b5 as well, to chase the knight away. But my opponent plays e3. He plays differently. I'm going to play c5, and if he takes, I'll recapture. And of course, I want to continue with knight c6 to reinforce my pawn and play e5. He plays b4. You see this move coming. He wants to deflect my pawn to win the central pawn. And here I think I remember that you have to play knight c6. Because if I play b5, I can retreat with my knight and keep knight c5 defending d4. And after knight c6, if he takes, I play e5. The knight supports the e5 push, and the bishop will be able to recover the pawn c5. So I play knight c6, but it's not so obvious to play knight c6 now, knowing that it can be chased away or that it can be taken. I didn't know about this move. It was by watching Grandmaster games that I saw it was possible. So now I go back home, but the b pawn missed its target. It was supposed to weaken my c5 pawn in order to then weaken my d4 pawn. He didn't succeed. So I take back. I still have the queen defending. He plays knight e5. Here I can't chase his knight away with f6. He would have queen to h5. Check. And on g6 he takes. Because taking back would allow him to win the rook, for example. I can look at g6 to play, bishop to g7. Why not, since my d4 pawn wants to be targeted? That's what I'm going to do, g6. He plays queen f3, threatening checkmate on f7. We'll simply play knight to f6 to develop and solve the problem of pressure on f7. The queen is aiming at b7, but the bishop is defending. For now, I have a rather aggressive player. He's attacking me. But we'll see, once he's run out of attacking moves, how will he manage to defend himself when I finish my development and start attacking him as well? Bishop g7. Both players might be heading for kingside castling. In any case, I'm going to do it. My opponent plays bishop to b2 and kingside castling. He just took castle. And now how am I going to defend my d4 pawn? Because we shouldn't forget that he can increase the pressure, especially with queen to d3. And then, for example, bring the knight back to f3. So here, if his knight was not there, I would have the move bishop g4 to attack his queen and his bishop, but he would still have queen d3. If I play the developing move, king to d7, he can play fd4, and I lose a pawn. I'm also considering queen to d6 to attack his knight. He can support the push to f5, but I'll have to watch out for bishop f3, where the knight protects the bishop, and that attacks me along the diagonal. All right, I'm going to play queen d6. I'm not convinced this is the best move, but we're going to play it anyway. We're going to question the knight while giving the d8 square to the rook. I would really like my knight to also be able to reach the c5 square. For example, knight d7, knight to c5. But this pressure on b7 still prevents my bishop from developing. That's really annoying. Maybe, actually. I should have gone to c7, but on c7 I wouldn't have been protecting the d4 pawn anymore. Well, as I told you, for now, this is the first time I'm putting real pressure in his camp. I'm attacking his knight. Let's see what he does. There we go. He's coming back to d3. He might actually be aiming for the c5 push, by the way. So should I play knight to d7 or not? Knight to d7, I shouldn't forget that times 3 could happen. I need to be able to defend this. I could move to e6, but that's not great. I'm going to take another look at bishop to g4 now, because he no longer has queen to d3. Ah, well, there we go. Bishop to g4, he can take on b7, but I take on e2. He can take my rook, but I can take his knight. I'll have 2 pieces for the rook, and I'll still be attacking his rook. And there you go. He's going to crack. That's it. Bishop g4. That's what I told you. You have to wait a bit and test him when you start attacking to see how he'll respond to my threats. The knight on e5 was preventing me from playing bishop g4, but now I can play it. So sure, it's true, there's the pawn, the rook, and then the unprotected pawn, but on my side there's the bishop, the knight, and the rook. So I take on it too. He plays c5, he's attacking my queen. And I'm going to play queen d5 to offer an exchange of queens while protecting my rook. You see, now he can't hold the position anymore, while his knight and rook are still in danger. He's playing very quickly now, but he's just making mistakes. He takes, look, knight takes. She just resigned, but that's typical. These are players who are actually stronger at creating initial threats, but as soon as the game gets a bit complicated and you manage to block their threats and start creating your own, they don't know how to handle it. They're very impulsive players who make attacking moves like that right from the start, but who actually don't know how to hold a position. The computer gives me 97% accuracy, but still with an inaccuracy in the game. And my inaccuracy comes in the opening. When the opponent plays b5, well, I went back to b8, whereas the computer considers that k5 is better. I didn't really want to put my knight on the edge, but maybe it puts some pressure on c4. I don't see why k5 is better, but that's the inaccuracy the computer points out. But now I understand, look, it's diabolical. In the game after b5, I went to b8, and he takes on d4, I recapture, and he plays k5. And that's not the right move. But actually, he could have played fb2 to attack the pawn twice, which I can no longer protect with e5 because I would lose the pawn on e5. And if I push to d3, he could certainly play queen b3, and it's the same. My pawn is surrounded. It's going to fall. So I was thinking in this position to play fg4, actually, to pin his knight so that his knight doesn't participate in the pressure on d4. And I thought that after bishop takes, I would just need to take his knight, queen takes to capture his bishop. Sure, I lose the pawn, b7, but I thought I could take his rook, and if he takes mine, I take his knight with check. The problem isn't that, it's that after bishop takes, queen takes bishop, queen takes b7. If I take his rook, he won't take mine. He'll do this instead. Queen to c8, checkmate. And the difference with knight to a5 is that the knight defends the b7 pawn, and that changes everything. After pawn takes bishop, b2, I can now play bishop g4. And my opponent is unable to play bishop. Takes d4, because this time it works. I can play bishop, takes knight queen, takes, and take his bishop, attacking his rook, sans que lui puisse venir prendre le pawn b7 pour contre-attaquer, parce que le knight défend. And now I'm up a piece. So you see, I was unaware of this subtlety. You always end up learning in every game against any level of opponent. I thought that knight a5 would put my knight on the edge and wouldn't be very interesting in the position. So I preferred to go back to b8 and then, for example, develop my bishop and redeploy my knight to d7. But in reality, it's knight to a5 that you should play in this position. Very instructive. All right, new game. I have white, and this time I'm going to start with the d4 pawn. Earlier, I started with the d4 pawn, and my opponent responds very quickly. e5. All right, I'll take. He plays knight to c6, in my opinion. He's going to try to set the Englund trap on me. I'll show you. So in this position, I'm going to play bishop f4 to defend, and now he's going to play queen e7, you'll see. If he tries this trap, players play queen e7. They're preparing queen b4 to attack the bishop, the king, the b2 pawn. And on top of that, with queen e7, he's attacking the e5 pawn twice. But if he plays queen e7, I'll play knight f3. And on queen b4 check, I'll bring my bishop back to d2, letting him take the b2 pawn. But I'll show you how you should play afterwards. But no, he doesn't play it. Bishop c5, so I'll show you that in the analysis because it's a trap you often see on online platforms, so you need to know it. But it doesn't really work for black, actually. If you know it, and you know how to play well with white, because if you don't know it, you can lose very quickly. fc5 is played. So I play e3, I block the influence of his bishop, and for now, I have an extra pawn. He plays knight e7, he wants to jump to g6, and I play knight f3. He jumps to g6, attacking the pawn twice, and I defend it twice. He could also take my dark square bishop, but I would recapture. I'm going to bring out my powerful bishop to b5 to remove from play his defending knight, thereby preventing him from easily recapturing the crucial pawn on e5. He plays knight f4. I recapture with the pawn. And of course, I'm preparing kingside castling, just like he is, I suppose. So the only difference is that I have one extra pawn. I take on c6. If he recaptures with the d7 pawn, I exchange queens, leaving his king unable to castle, and going into the endgame with an extra pawn. I'm doing kingside castling. Here, we also have a confrontation of two knights against two bishops. Now, two bishops can be powerful. But for now, it's mainly the bishop c5 that's bothering me. The bishop, it's 8. It's not in the fight. I'm going to play knight c3 maybe to have moves like knight e4. Attack his bishop. I'm going to look at moves like g5 to also have queen to h5, start attacking the h7 pawn. Create checkmate threats. He plays d6. So here, if I take, he can recapture with the pawn and try to improve his pawn structure. But I'm really tempted to play knight to e4 first. That's what I'm going to do. I'm attacking his bishop. And I'm tripling the attacks on the d6 pawn. So if his bishop retreats, I win the d6 pawn. He takes, but as a result, he leaves me the bishop. So I could take the bishop right away or exchange queens first. I'm going to exchange queens first to have a calm endgame. Now I have an extra piece. Two knights against a lone light-squared bishop, which for now isn't doing anything. And the pawn on a5 is hanging. He takes, my knight controls the d2 square, his rook can't get in, but I'm definitely going to play rook to d1 to challenge his rook. All right, rook to d1. Now he can activate his light-squared bishop, bishop to g4, the pin on h, bishop to f5 to attack the c2 pawn, but none of those moves scare me, because if he trades the bishop for the knight, he'll still be down a piece, my knight. I'm going to bring the other rook onto the file. I'm not taking right away, so I don't activate his rook. He takes, I recapture, and I still have the extra knight. He plays rook to d5, attacking my knight. I could just trade rooks, maybe try to find a slightly more interesting move, but I'll just trade the rooks. There's still the extra knight anyway. In this position, you have to show why the knight is superior. Already, it attacks a 6, so the rook is forced to defend. Now we're going to get onto the 7th rank to attack the c7 pawn. I didn't see it, but actually I could have taken on a 6. If he recaptures, there was the back rank mate. I'm only realizing that now. But that would have just allowed me to win a pawn if he didn't recapture. And now, in any case, I've just won one. So he comes to e8. He's not trying to go to e1 because my king could go to g2, but to get into e2. So I'll play king f1 to prevent him from getting any counterplay. I don't want his rook to penetrate. And after that, we'll go pawns hunting. There's the d6 pawn. I can go to d7 to take the d5 pawn. Once I win those pawns, of course, the game becomes a promotion game. I need to push the extra pawns I have, my pawn majority and my passed pawns, to create a promotion and thus get a queen. And now my opponent has disconnected. He's not being very sportsmanlike. He's just going to let the time run out. But it's not a big deal. We'll just let the time run out. And now the computer tells me that my opponent has left the game without resigning and that I can claim victory in 37 seconds. That's typical of bad players who they prefer to let the time run out and try to waste the opponent's time when they've already lost. But you've probably already come across this type of opponent in online game zones. And so, once again, the computer gives me an analysis score of 97% accuracy versus 79% for my opponent. So, as I told you, I was still going to show you this Englund trap. So when you play d4 and your opponent responds with e5, you have to take knight c6. You can defend with the knight or the bishop. Personally, I like to start with the bishop. And if your opponent plays queen e7, you defend again. The opponent will play queen b4, check attacking. The bishop, the pawn b2, and the king. You can't defend everything, so you have to bring the bishop back to d2. Queen takes b2. And here comes the shameful trap. It's if you want to play bishop to c3. Bishop to c3, it seems like the optimal move. Since the knight protects the bishop attacks the queen and defends the rook. It's the move you want to play, but it's a losing move. Why? Because black will play bishop b4, and you can't take the queen because you're pinned. And if you take the bishop, you lose the rook, or there could even be knight takes bishop with the rook still attacked and threats of knight c2. So as a result, after bishop b4, what can we be led to play? Sometimes there are players who play queen d2, but this is terrible. Bishop takes c3. If we take back the knight, we lose the rook. And if we take the queen, queen c1, checkmate. So how should we defend ourselves? I'll show you again. d4, e5, you take. Knight c6, bishop f4, queen e7, knight f3, queen b4, check. We bring the bishop back, and after queen takes b2, you must not play foo c3. In reality, you have to play knight c3. Here, opponents will play two types of moves, either knight b4 or foo b4. If they play knight b4, you have to defend the c2 pawn with knight d4. And if the opponent tries to chase your knight with c5, you first chase their queen, queen a3, and now knight b5. We attack their queen and threaten forks on c7. So they'll go to a 5, but a 3. Protected by the knight, the two knights protect each other. We're attacking his knight, and the idea is that the queen will then also be targeted by the bishop. For example, his knight, if it comes to a 6 or c6, maybe a 6 to try to defend the square. c7, we can play knight to a4, attacking his queen. We have both knights that can jump into d6. It's a very beautiful position. Queen to d8, let's imagine. Knight to d6 check. Bishop takes, knight to d6 check. His king is castled. King to e7 or king to e8. After that, for example, we can play e4, and we have a very beautiful position. We're not down any material. 7 pawns against 7 pawns. We have better development, the pair of bishops, a better center, and the opponent's king is castled. So as I told you, when the queen takes the b2 pawn, you shouldn't play bishop c3, but knight c3. And that's when I spoke to you. So kd b4, but there's also bishop b4. You have to play rook b1, same thing. Queen a3. I like to play rook b3 here to chase away. The queen that comes to a5 and the push a3. If the bishop takes, there are many interesting moves because the bishop is exposed, the queen also. We could play rook b5, which is an interesting move because the queen only has the a6 square. And after the push to e4, with pressure on the queen. And in the end, it's the attacker who gets attacked. But after bishop takes a3, we also have rook takes, queen takes, and knight b5. And since the bishop controls the a5 square, the queen can get there, and we could do that. Knight takes c7, attacking the king, forcing him to lose castling rights and getting revenge on the black rook. And if black plays bishop takes knight, then I usually recapture with the bishop to attack the queen. And it's the same. I have a good position. I'm not down a pawn. I have better development, the pair of bishops. So it's a position that is still pleasant. And their queen is exposed, which can be attacked. So the name of this Englund Gambit that black can use comes from the player named Fritz Englund, who popularized this opening. Well, that's it. We'll meet again soon for new videos, but don't forget to leave likes, comments. That helps the visibility of my video and simply helps me get known. You can support the channel and, of course, share the videos. Goodbye, everyone.